Welcome everyone to DRJ's webinar series. I'm Bob Arnold, President here at DRJ. We thank you for your attendance today and we hope you gather some great information from today's webinar. Everyone's phone has been muted and we ask you to utilize the question panel you find on the right hand side of the screen. Our speakers today will attempt to answer as many as possible at the end of the webinar. Today's sponsor is Strategic BCP. Today's topic is how, as business continuity professionals, we became our C-level's most trusted advisors. Our speakers today include Frank Perlmutter, Mark Eggleston, and Chris Duffy. Frank is the president and co-founder of Strategic BCP, creators of Resilience One BCM software. He has over 18 years of experience in business continuity and risk management, and is the former consultant with the Big Four, plus a manager of DR and Coop and risk manager for the U.S. Department of Treasury. Mark is the Director of Security and Business Continuity at Health Partners Plans, a nonprofit health insurance organization serving more than 187,000 members. He has worked as a privacy, security, business continuity, and compliance professional for over 13 years. Chris is the President and CIO, their business continuity, or Strategic BCP, and former CIO at Pierce College in Philadelphia. He as well has over 20 years in business continuity experience. With no further introductions, I'd like to welcome and turn the mic over to Frank.
All right. Thanks a lot, Bob. And thanks, everybody, for attending today. We're going to be going over a lot of different items on becoming a trusted advisor to our C-level. So an interesting topic, definitely. Very interesting to write up and to develop content and to provide examples too. One of the biggest things that the three of us have all done and we thought would be very valuable was to tell you how we went from being a typical business continuity professional, from doing plans and I would say some of the less exciting and valuable tasks, to really becoming that trusted advisor to the C-level. So we're going to go over some of the characteristics that makes a trusted advisor. We're also going to be going over too a very interesting term that we came up with called an ERP. So keep that one in mind. It sounds strange, but it's going to be a very important term in the presentation. You can see there the next three bullet points are about the ERP. How do we deliver it at the meeting with the C-level people? How do we get organized? How do we discover what matters? And what are some of the real-world examples from the three of us? And we definitely each have different perspectives on that one. And also, how do you maintain that seat at the C-level table? And at the end, what we're going to do is we're also going to answer if you have any specific challenges. You say, you know what, I've tried this, I've tried something else. What do you suggest? We are more than happy to answer as many of those questions that you may have. So we're going to try to leave a good amount of time at the end to answer those for you. Okay. So our perspectives are definitely diverse. We come from different contexts and backgrounds. Myself, I was a DR and a BC manager at an organization, but I was also, too, a consultant on a limited time engagement. So really, when we focused on those different types of things, in the organization, I was obviously looking to move ahead in that organization, get promoted, get higher pay as a consultant. When I say a limited time engagement, one of my first engagements was a month and a half long on a HIPAA project for business continuity. I wound up where I was there for over 2.5 years, working on a variety of different projects. And it was business continuity turned into strategic engagement with the C-level, and also into a number of different projects, about 4 additional projects that I headed up as a consultant. And while I was doing that, my rate was going up and up and up, and that's what we were really looking for. So not only was I moving up, but I was also achieving more and obviously getting what we all desire, and getting that recognition, and also getting that higher compensation.
Well, good afternoon, all. This is Mark Eggleston. I kind of came into this world, this is probably a second, maybe even a third career, and Formerly, I was a psychotherapist and then moved into more of an information security professional position at the advent of HIPAA. This was pre-2000, and certainly privacy and security were quite novel to a lot of healthcare organizations. So I worked to create privacy security programs, did consulting, et cetera. And of course, a big portion of the HIPAA rule is business continuity and disaster recovery. So long story short, came back over into the IT world to do more of that development in an IT realm as well. So I've been doing updates to our C-level board for a number of years and enjoy speaking on the topic. If it's privacy and security, it's really what my passion is.
Okay. And Chris is joining us from the Atlanta Hartsfield Airport right now, so hopefully we get a nice clear connection from him. Chris, can you introduce yourself?
Yes. Hey, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for your time. I'm Chris Duffy, and I'm actually the Vice President of Consulting for Strategic BCP, and I literally started as a client almost 10 years ago. Wasn't always a CIO, had come up through the ranks into IT management, and through all of that, in all the organizations, DR is firmly embedded in that. And so here, I was a CIO for approximately 12 years, running a 24/7 operation, and brought DR BCP as a holistic picture to the organization. So taking that to the board was quite a challenge in getting that time slice, so to speak. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's interesting. What you're going to see is we can all offer perspectives on not only the field level, but also, too, as the executives, especially Chris, what do you want to hear? Chris had a number of different people coming to him every day, making requests for his time, and Chris is a nice guy, but there's only so many hours in a day, and only a few can get through. So Chris will give you some perspectives on how the most successful people did that. Okay, so as we move on, we're going to start with what makes a trusted advisor. There's value to that relationship, and that's really what the C-level values. It's an individual that's valued for their perspective on things, their insight, their judgment on different subjects. So when we went in to the different C-level people came into Chris, we were valued on not just business continuity or disaster recovery, but we were valued on operations. We were valued in how information technology supported the different areas of the business. We had that holistic view. We were seen as credible. So in other words, we were honest about our opinions, and we expected when we were giving that feedback and telling people what we thought, that was very good, and I think that was very important in being honest with people. Reliable was that we had the data at our fingertips. They know that they could count on us. We were the source of truth, and that was really important too. We had the data that they did not. So being that source of truth was extremely important. So really the value, as you can see here, trusted advisors are valued. Why? Because they're rare. A lot of times they become, as the trusted advisors, they become indispensable to the C-level doing their job. So that's really important. And obviously, what do trusted advisors get? Praise, promotions, and pay. I guess the 3 Ps. I guess it's sort of like I guess marketing has the 4 Ps. You have the 3 Ps with being the trusted advisor. So that's really, really important too. Those obviously you're doing it for those reasons, for getting noticed, and for being more, for elevating your position at the organization with the C-level. Okay. So now the mysterious term here of an IRF. What exactly is an IRF? Okay. So becoming a trusted advisor is based upon understanding how you can bring value to the ultimate responsible person or people. It can be singular or plural. These are the folks that are responsible for key initiatives at their organization. Okay? So those are the people that you want to talk to. Those are the C-level people, and there are a variety of different people across the different initiatives, across the different departments, the IT areas, those different types of things. getting to be a trusted advisor with the IRP is a step-by-step process. It's a progression. That process can start with either secondary research, so that's research where you're not talking with somebody, where you're looking at data or or paper or electronic records, any sort of thing, to primary research where you're actually asking the person. So the big thing that you need to understand are, A, what's most important to those folks, because it's not going to be everything. Their job title may not be indicative of what exactly is important to those people. And once you find out what's important, why is that important? What are their motivations behind that? What's incenting them to focus on these group of activities? That is really, really important. Until you understand that, you can't be a trusted advisor. That's a really important aspect of getting, of becoming that trusted advisor on there. And here's the thing. So there's initial needs. So when you first start out, that's really important. But then things tend to change too. So it's keeping up. That's what a trusted advisor does. Hey, we handled. We all said. Mark and I said, hey, we did HIPAA. HIPAA's not particularly important anymore. HIPAA was important for us and was the focus for about a year and a half. Things changed. Things were now are going into obviously like a security realm. They're going into a governance, risk and compliance realm, more in that risk management. Following along with what they're doing, what they're thinking is extremely important to do. And obviously, a lot of people are going to say, well, it's like, well, you know what, Frank? You know what, Mark, Chris? Easier said than done. Well, we're going to show you how we did that, the different methods for doing that, both while you're doing it without the IRP and while you're doing it with the IRP. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go into the process. So how do we discover what matters? And in the next couple of slides, Chris is going to go over the process for doing that.
Thank you.
Sure.
So when you look at from a C-level, we get two hats we really wear. One's a baseball cap to look forward, and the other one's a fireman's cap because our fireman's hat to let the stuff run off of us as we're dealing with those fires. So when you're looking at it from a business continuity practitioner or professional, I say this all the time. They have, or you have, the best insight and understanding across your entire organization. That value of that data is priceless. You understand the business side, the support components, even on the IT side and the gaps in between there. So when you look at what initiatives am I looking at from the C-level, they're always are going to either, well, they better touch the business side and they're going to touch the IT side. So how do you bring those together? And what am I not seeing? When you look at what insights can you provide that haven't been answered, you'll see some of the things that I'm not able to see. You're down in the trenches. You're dealing with those business units and those subject matter experts that are in there. So who is, C is who is the IRP for each of those strategic initiatives, CIO to CFO or the COO. Those are the people that you're really looking and targeting. So when you look at number 2, this is the value, is help me avoid the landmines. In that risk is, hey, going down this road, we'll never be able to make it. We don't have the resource in here, or the expectation of the business unit is an immediate response, and there's no way we're going to be able to do that unless we mitigate that this way. So again, you guys have the knowledge that is just so valuable, and the insights that, A, I don't have those relationships, or B, I don't have the time or the focus or even the knowledge to get those. There's no water cooler for me, so to speak. So when you look at who's that IRP, that's the important piece is, hey, who do I identify and what value am I going to bring to them? And I'm sure you're all chuckling, is how do I make you look good? But my rule has always been hire people smarter than yourself, and why is that? So they can help me look good. help me turn my firefighter's hat around and make it the baseball cap so I'm looking into the sun. And it's what's keeping me up at night. You have a pretty good idea, especially when it comes to strategic initiatives or in the business units, those things that are going to be at risk or present risk. So get them to me. And, here's some great terms. Hey, there's a board meeting come up on it. Is there anything I can do to give it to you? Because, again, you may not see or realize the value of the data and understanding you have across the enterprise at your fingertips.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a lot of what we're going to cover today in the last part of the presentation is what data is that? What does that look like, and how do you deliver that too?
Sure.
Okay. So now that we know, we can study, we can look and see, what's going on at the organization, that secondary research. We can actually, give me a couple of minutes. I think I can really help you. Tell me what worries you, what keeps you, like you're saying, what keeps you up at night, what's important to you, those kind of things. Either way, getting to them, asking the right questions is important. So now, how do you get organized, and how do you actually get that meeting? How do you get the meeting where you can sit down with them and present all of these great ideas and insights that you have? So Mark is going to talk about that in the next couple of slides.
Thanks, Frank. So I guess everybody can have their own methods, but there's certainly a couple of hallmarks that we should all be adhering to. If you look at this slide, you'll see there's gather data and deliverables. As part of that process, remember who you can delegate to, and also do some type of cross-check or some other type of analysis. When you're going up the ladder, whether it's you personally or report up, you don't want to be caught with poor data. So give that data to somebody else to analyze, or hopefully you've got some direct reports that are crunching some of that for you as well. That's very important. Determine the gaps of what you have and what's going to be of value. A good place to start there is to know your regulations. Frank was speaking about HIPAA earlier, and of course after HIPAA there's what? There's high tech, and then there's omnibus rule, but it doesn't stop there. We're in no shortage of having regulatory plethora of stuff hitting us all, no matter what vertical you're in. Keep in mind the Department of Health, Department of Insurance in our world, model audit rule. If you're under the NAIC or your insurance provider, you've got something now called ORSA. So it just never ends. Know these rules, because that's where you can get some additional help to help you in your journey to become that trusted advisor. Frank, did you want to say something?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, Mark's talking a lot about healthcare, hospitals, those kind of things. It's interesting. I'm sure a lot of you are going, what is that? And that's interesting. And a lot of the executives in different organizations in healthcare are saying the same thing. What is that? And even more importantly, how does that impact me? What do I need to do to comply or to conform to these standards, regulations, best practices? And now you throw in all the business continuity ones. You have the ISO standard. It's interesting. We focused a lot on ISO 22301, but really there's a lot of need. A lot of folks are asking, well, what about 22313? Isn't that the companion standard? Oh, it sure is. Well, that looks like a great framework. How do we conform to that?
Right. So
and it's tricky, yeah. Trying to juggle all of those things together and to simplify that provides extensive value to a director of compliance, to a CIO, to a business leader, to a CEO. That all, it affects them.
Right. And getting that kind of buy-in from external people too. You can go to LinkedIn or your other favorite business porn site, but get that information there and review it. External vendors will be happy to give you their opinion. Certainly don't leave out the internal folks to get consensus on too when you're doing a gap analysis. I've been a long fan of my colleagues in internal audit. They have helped me get budget. I've been a long fan of compliance. It's where I started in this realm as well. So those are good people to come on board with you and help promote and sell your plan. Having the data still isn't enough either. Your work really needs to glean the pertinent insights. And this is important. It seems like the higher up you get in the ladder, the less your attention span is. And that's probably for good reason. You have more and more on your plate. So I think it's important to make sure that you've always got, maybe it's the rule of threes, no more than 3 bullet points there. Get the 3 pertinent data, but don't bury somebody in a speech or a data. As far as determining how long it's going to take for these gaps, I'm a big fan of a chevron slide. We've all seen them before. You have the chevrons at the top, the little block arrows that tell you the phases. The phases can be from systems design life cycle. They could be from project management or project management institute. And then at the bottom you have a timeline. These are very good for tracking, so you can show what stage you are, and people can tell you where your program is going from just one page. And it also helps you build that reliability as well, as long as you're hitting those dates. So always fudge those dates and give yourself the leeway. You want to gain reliability through a diagram like that. I think also having that and socializing something like that through your organization will help you with your elevator pitch or your 30-second speech to help people understand what it is you're doing and the value you're bringing as a trusted advisor. Last but not least, as mentioned, making sure your methods can be repeated. A synonym for reliability is really credibility. So keep those things in mind. Next slide. On this slide here, you've got a couple quotes here on ways to ask for the meeting. Frank and Chris are welcome to join in as far as if you want to add some more value to these bullet points. What you'll see here, though, is you'll see the common theme is that you're asking for permission and you're given a due date. It's, if you say, may I schedule a 20-minute meeting with you sometime? Well, sometime it's like putting anybody in charge. You put nobody in charge. Take names, take dates, and get that information. Be certainly polite, but be forward-thinking, and forward-thinking requires an ask, a brief ask. You'll see on my last bullet point there about security, too. For those of us who have security or are dealing in that realm, be careful with FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. I'm typically not a big fan of saying, I need to talk to you now. There's a huge vulnerability. You don't want to play that card very often. So, keep in mind a more likable approach is like, hey, I think I found something very interesting that you'd like to know. And then have that. You're going to build some more credibility, and then you have the chance to give a little bit more information and continue to build that relationship. It's key, like it is in all business relationships.
Right. Right. And I think Mark, makes a good point about that FUD factor. And as well, and if you know who you're talking to, is stay away from the acronyms that we all know and love, and put it in terms that that they're going to want to hear. Hey, I got a way to bring IT and business ops together. Not, I have a better way to increase your ROI. I've already glazed over and gone. Make it applicable and friendly. Stay away from any terminology we feel comfortable with. Make it what they feel comfortable with. Right? Yeah. You say so, Mark. I mean, vulnerabilities versus, oh my gosh, I discovered a hack. I'm not gonna hear you.
Yeah, it's a challenge. Avoid acronyms at all costs.
Yeah, they don't know them. It's interesting because if it's funny. BIA. Everybody's like, what the heck is a BIA? I don't know what that is. And some of the general terms too, like you're saying, the cliche terms, tend to be a little more, they're overused. But sometimes you only get, you see, like in this one, we're introducing ourselves here, and a lot of times, it is an introduction. I remember the first time, when I was a business continuity planner, they introduced me, they sat me down with the undersecretary of the Treasury, and he sat down. Who the heck is this guy? Who am I? I don't know him. What value is he bringing here? And I basically went up the ladder. I said, listen, I have an excellent idea of how to streamline operations for collecting claims on behalf of Health and Human Services. What is it? And you want to get specific, but not too specific of where it's going to take you 2 minutes to explain. It's like that, everybody always says that elevator pitch. You need to intrigue them within that 30 seconds and intrigue them enough to get the meeting. And, hey, send me something, I'll talk to you later. Your time is now, I mean, how many more other chances was I going to get to have that meeting? Not many. But I did it, and Chris has had people come into his office, and like Mark too, and having that, it's something that, is very exciting, I think, when you initially get, and then obviously maintaining that over time. It all starts with the first one, so really make it insightful and good. We'll show you some of examples of how to do that. Okay, so now the next thing is now so now you have the meeting, Okay, and I'm sure we'll get a lot of questions too. You know, if you have some other ideas at the end, they'd be welcome to on how to get the meeting. So now you're getting ready for it, you're prepping for it, and we're going to give you some tips in prepping for the meeting, and then also in ultimately delivering too. You know, what are the successful techniques that we've had? So Chris is going to cover that.
All right. So, you know, Mark said it, you know, data is king. Make sure it's right. Sound, you've done your analysis, you've done some of your verification, and keep those narratives, as it says, keep those narratives short. What I want to see, you know, hey, I like Gantt charts, pie charts, or, you know, pivot tables, is give it to me in that high level, here it is, and here's some of the backup for it. Boom, boom, boom. You know, I don't want to see, you know, a long page document with a nice cover letter, small cover pages. Just don't even show me a plan. And this is where I got it from. Yeah, it's nice on the raw data to have it, but I'm probably not going to ask for that. And when, you know, that last bullet point is probably the biggest. Anything that requires a long explanation, don't tell me what BIA is. Anytime you have to explain or educate your audience, you're going to lose them. Don't use the BIA or, you know, here's the recovery. Our gap on the recovery time capability is is a critical 2.7 hours. Okay, next. You've lost me. The eyes will glaze over, and I'm already thinking about the next thing that I have to deal with. So, right. You know, keep it concise, very clear. I mean, obviously have the backup, because we may get into that discussion. You know, you've hit that point that I realize is a huge pain point, or is going to be. Good, especially if I'm going to bring it up later, or, you know, I'm going to sit with my board of directors because it's that egregious or that important. I'm going to need to do that, and I probably might even bring you with me.
Mm-hmm. Agreed, Chris. I think it's important. You know, your God gave you one mouth and 2 ears for a reason, and, you know, just. I do see occasionally some professionals, you know, feel like they need to monopolize or talk too much. It's definitely not even a two-way street. If you're talking half the time or more, you're not doing it right.
Yeah. Yeah. What do we start with? Frank, you said at the beginning, it's a trusted advisor. You've got the meeting. Now the opportunity that you're going to have to build that trust. So it's all that background of, yeah, I got your back. I see what's coming. And here's all the, you know, I have that backup data to do it, but that trusted advisor piece.
Mm-hmm. And like an example of that would be, you know, it's interesting, you know, when you go and you make your point in there and you say, just giving an example, Department A has been underperforming for a long time. They know that. They read the financial statements. They see the revenue that's brought in. I have a way that they can generate. We can turn this around. They can generate 3 times the amount of revenue that they're generating right now and cut costs in half. Let me show you how to do that. There's not a narrative explanation around that. It's very clear. It's very concise. I give them a couple of points on doing that, and I tell them what's required to do that. And the big thing on here, too, and the reason why the top bullet point, you can see opinions are neither reliable or credible. Facts are. And anybody that's ever come to any of my webinars or sessions or anything knows this is a huge pet peeve of mine and pretty much almost any executive that you run into. When you're doing your business impact analysis and you're presenting the most important things, whether it be your business processes, whether it be your IT, your vendors, whoever it is, what they do is when you go on in there and you say, well, why is that important on there? What happens is that, oh, looks like we're getting a little echo.
We're good.
Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. All right, you want to take that? Okay. All right. Sorry about that. When you're going on in and you're saying so-and-so said this was important, that's not data. That is an opinion. That is not fact. That is the quickest way to end an executive meeting. that you're not providing insight into anything. What you're doing is you're basically conveying an opinion of maybe another C-level person or people within the department. Not very valuable on there. And I always say that is the biggest trap that a business continuity professional can fall into. Another thing is, too, is that when you're looking at this, the plans. Hey, look at my plan. Look at how great this is. Boy, they don't want to see that. That is something that has to be done. That is something that they should be confident in you in getting done. That is not providing any additional insight into anything other than, hey, look, I finished up my plan. So definitely leave those behind. Okay. So let's move on to the next slide. Chris, can you talk about preparing?
Sure. Right. Again, I keep reiterating it. Give it to me short and clear. Here's, as the URP is, this is why I want to meet with you. We've done the validation. Mark brought up the good point, the 3 bullet points. Here's what they are. Again, no opinion. Give me that factual. And, hey, you know what? Give it to me in advance. There's a good chance that it's going to sit in my mailbox, and, I'm going to get some time to look at it. And it may be a minute or two before the meeting, but it shows on your part, the preparation that you've taken for that, as well as the thought you've given into it. Mark, you have anything to add on that one? No. Having done them as well?
Mark was the one causing the echo, so he stepped out for a little bit. But I can definitely
sure.
provide insight into that. Yeah, you don't. Oh, here we go. He's back. You don't have a lot of time to make your point in there. So an executive summary is good. It's usually like a half a page to a page.
Yep.
Mark, when you've done executive summaries, how do those look for you?
I'm a big fan of making it a paragraph, a half a page max if you have to. I mean, brevity is king here.
Yeah, and always those numbers in there are good. What are you helping me solve? How are you going to help me solve that? Problem statement, solution statement. There's your executive summary, and it should be salient enough where they can dig into that extra data. So in other words, I'm putting down a single sheet of paper, but I've got a little folder by my side where I can provide the rest on there. And also, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, and make sure though that you put some contextual background to it. As here's why we're doing this, or here's what it is. Just a little bit of that background before you hit those 2 points.
Mm-hmm. But limited, not too much, not too long. Say it, don't write it on there, because they're going to be looking on there. They hear a little bit of that, background information, but not too much.
Right, and as important as the preparing is, I think sometimes it's important to begin with the end in mind. So I think a presentation style I've seen be very successful is start with objectives, and then when you're done, end with a recap. And then the final question is, did I answer all your questions? Because that's ultimately what you're here for, to have that dialogue. If your presentation is brief and comes back to that, did I answer your questions, you'll get that dialogue.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I'm showing the next slide because we're making some points, I think, in there too. So let's discuss that. Mark, do you want to do a little? Do you want to discuss a little bit on this slide right here on let it rip and give them a taste, not the complete solution?
So, sure, with letting it rip, it's important just to reiterate how you're going to help this person. Executive summary, first 5 minutes of the meeting, that's definitely key. Ask them too, and hopefully you've done that beforehand so you'll know what key points to hit. You may not have the direct relationship with the URP, but hopefully you've got a direct relationship with the direct report to the URP. Get inside that person's mind to at least know what they're going to want to have or what points they're going to want to have addressed.
What you're doing is you're starting from the top and drilling down into what matters to them. You may make 3 points and they may only find one of them compelling. Drill down into what matters to them and focus on that. And that's the biggest thing right here. So you can see here, what do they find compelling? Which of those points in that executive summary? Focus the remaining time on those items. And here's the other thing, too. Talk about results, not how you got them. People tend to you can get very excited in a meeting and go, yeah, you know what, I wound up, we sat down with all these folks, and then I have this great analysis tool, and I did this, and I did that. There's the old saying, I don't care, I always screw this up, I don't care how you get the ham, how you slaughter the bull as long as the steak tastes good or something like that. I think there's a vegetarian one now too.
You're staying consistent, Frank.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I always screw this one up. Yeah. I don't care how you prepare the meal as long as it's delicious. There we go. I guess that's a little more, catering to everybody's food preferences. But anyway, talk about the results. Not how you got it. Give them a taste, not the solution. This is to compel them in the process. It's not going to end with that initial meeting. Results, when you follow on to these things, they're going to expect execution and action. You found something. You've determined a potential solution for that. Your job is to get the go-ahead to do that. Funding, time, resources, whatever it may be, and to move ahead with that. That's always the first part in becoming that trusted advisor. So you can see that last point, additional time or meetings are a sign that you have delivered, that you have done well within that meeting.
So to recap some of this, I like Mark's threes. It's an old adage I've learned early on is, tell them what you're going to tell them. That's your executive summary. And then in the presentation, tell them what you're telling them. And then your recap, tell them what you told them. So another three that sits there. And Frank is absolutely right. You've got my attention. I see that. We're going to keep going. I'll cancel my next meeting, or we need to do this. That is the best sign of success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Immediate success.
Yeah. And you always ask them too. Are you sure you don't have to get to that? I know you said you. No. And you know. Yeah. Validate. Yeah. Very important. Yeah. We've all seen it. Yeah. Validate. That's the important thing. Yeah. I like to see whether they have something afterwards. It's like, I know I only have a brief amount of time. I know you probably have another meeting afterwards, but let me get right to the point. Boom, 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 boom. Here you go. Here's my executive summary. There you go. So now, the last part of our presentation is going to cover some of the real-world examples. What have we done to be successful? And we're going to cover a couple of different areas where we've done quite well with. So just to put this in context for you, value that you bring as a trusted advisor revolves around a couple of things. So this will help you narrow it down a little bit on what to focus on. Operations are key. Everything revolves around what your organization does. For-profit, nonprofit, no matter what it is, what do you do? How do you do it on there? How can you help in those areas? And then there's the supporting resources. Some people call those support components, assets, human resources, whatever you want to call them on there. The things that help operate your business. And typically, we're all gathering this in our business impact analysis. This is a very core interdependencies. These are all of the things that are helping our operations that we understand intimately, and we understand intimately when they're impacted. We understand what that impact is. We understand how important they are to operating the business. And think about that. That's the key right there. So when we look at things like, we can go into a technology realm with the CIO on here. The technology folks a lot of times don't talk so well with the business folks. Connecting those two together, this arrow usually doesn't exist very well. In a lot of organizations, there's not a lot of give and take. Usually it's technology supporting the operations, and the operations going, yeah, it's just these guys playing with their toys over there. That's not great. That is a huge problem of a CIO, CTO, or CISO. Big, big, big. How do I better deliver to the business? Their value is determined by that. You look at facilities and assets, the facility manager, the equipment that we use, all of those different types of things on there. How does that support that? Buildings are important. The way we work is important. Where we work is important. Collaboration. If we're doing manufacturing, proximity to different, to our different manufacturing sites on there, and even back office or service activities. How do we coordinate those things together? How do we think more strategically about where we are located on there and the assets that are supporting things? I look at a variety of different machinery or equipment that we use that's specialized on there. There's sure a lot of it out there, and boy, it sure is expensive. Is it providing value? And then obviously the people too. Are people delivering in skill sets, with the skill sets that they have, into our core areas? Should people be moved into different areas? Should people not be in those, in the organization altogether? Do we need more people? When we understand the activities that are being performed, when we understand the operations and the people out there who are performing these activities on a daily basis, know quite well where the process is falling down. They give you insight into this. And when you connect these people up with the C-level people, you are the champion of the world. You are not only a trusted advisor to the C-level, but you're also helping to be a liaison with the people that they're supporting. And a lot of times that is a huge challenge. It's like Chris says, a lot of times the C-level, we're not at the water cooler. I don't have time. A lot of them don't have the desire to. They don't want to do that. I need help in doing that. That's you. You can provide those services on there, and we've all done that, either as C-level people or as the folks out in the field as the business continuity professionals. So over the next couple of slides, what we're going to do is we're going to go over how to deliver to an IT ERP, or URP as Mark is calling it. I still like ERP. I still like it. And also delivering to a business ERP on here too. So we're going to start with the C-level IT, ultimate responsible person. There we go. And Mark and Chris are going to discuss that. So Mark is going to discuss some of the motivation on this, and then we're going to get into some of the specific examples on there too.
Sure. So Chris, you want to start with the CIO component?
Yeah. Now, sure. It's again. Remember, usually they've either put in there or they've come up through the ranks. So the CIO initially would have had some visibility and insight to the business, but due to the nature of the beast and the position, is that becomes less and less and less over time. And that's even exacerbated if you're new to the role. It may be in the same industry, but you're coming in, everybody does things differently. So that's where my value really sits, is understanding the business unit and providing solutions to them that are of value. So without that, that's why I need you.
Well said. I mean, I like the third bullet on here. You know, you're the trusted advisor. For those of you that are doing business continuity or doing security with vulnerability management systems, you're probably a data owner, a data custodian. You have this information. What are you going to do with it? I would encourage all of us that maintain such systems to, of course, use that data. We're certainly in the era of big data now, and it's for a reason. More and more businesses, regardless of what vertical you are in, are data-driven and very competitive on that. So I think it's our obligation, not just our job, to go ahead and find value. You know, find the inflows, find the outflows. You know, if there's something that can be run more efficiently, hopefully your business continuity management platform can tell you that, or your vulnerability management system can tell you where to focus on things first. Resources are finite. You need the system to figure out where to put value.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay, next slide. Oh. This is a slide about application summary. Frank will be here to walk us through this in just a moment, but you know, this is where you can actually have the numbers and do the analysis here. You've got the different applications, and you know, in this particular system, every time that you're declaring an application being used, it should have a point value. And furthermore, if that application is a critical application, it should have more points thrown at it. So you can see here, a SAN, or a storage area network, is quite critical to the business operations. So it's very helpful to have this level of data. Now, you wouldn't want to be sharing this with your ERP. You would be sharing this with those other people to get some validation of this data, so you can get those 2 to 3 summary points on that. But this is good to have in your back pocket.
Oh, this is great, and it's such a valuable piece of information that you now are, you know, you have the validation from the business side, or that importance of the business operations, and going back to IT, you now have a huge, you know, you're performing a gap analysis. We do this quite a bit for clients, and it really drives the IT budget. And the fact that you're coming to me and say, here are the gaps, that you need to take a look at and put some mitigations in place. And when I come back and go, great, thank you, where'd you get this? We can drill down. So, this would be almost like a level 2 or a level 3. Because before I start assigning resources to get this done, I'm going to want to know. I'm going to roll up my sleeves. We've just gone from that 20-minute meeting to 2 hours in getting that and saying, okay, where did you get this from? How did you get this? What is an RTO? Again, I don't know those terms, or I may not know them, and so I mean I would have changed this around a little bit, but the point's still there at a high level. I can see what my gaps are, and you're letting me know where I need to focus, so that when I go forward, my budget is now business-driven and not to the old adage on the IT side of you just want to buy some new toys.
Yeah, we'll show you some of the other slides on here too, and it's interesting because I left RTO in there. I didn't let Chris take a look at this slide to see if he would notice that on there. It's interesting because when we're looking at something like this, it's interesting. Everything is sort of falling into line on here. The most important thing, and then the numbers go down. You can see here, but one of the big things is a lot of times, I go on in here and we call this a trip point. When does it get bad for me? What is that? Sometimes we leave this off, but a lot of times what happens is that, like, one of the things that's very important to the business might have a lot of breadth, like SolidWorks may be involved in a lot of the different business areas, but the RTO on that may not be until 2 weeks. So the first one may not need to be required on that. It's interesting. Are we overspending? Are we underspending on there? And when we start getting into a little bit more detail on here, what you can see is that when we take one of those elements out of there, and we have a server here, but let's just say this is an application. We go on out, and like Chris said, we can dig down. We can see on here this one application supports all these different business functions and all these different RTOs on here. We're going in, and we're saying, you know what, this isn't, as for Chris's point, this isn't just a toy. Far be it from that. If you consider this a toy by bringing down all these different processes, 4 of which have to be up immediately, 15 minutes, 2 hours, 1 day, 4 days, all these different items on here, we have got a major problem. And if we want to get even more detailed and break this down in here, we can look at what the impact is. We have a point scoring method. We haven't put up the key on here, but that's what you would have on here. What is a 32, a 20, what do these things mean? Let's just say those are very high. We're spiking up in revenue, loss of confidence, and legal and regulatory. Holy moly. The C-level really cares about these types of things on here. I'm losing revenue, public confidence. So if I just take one small piece of this IT picture on here, of this asset, we have got big problems if this thing is idle. Or we can look at this and we can say, this piece of infrastructure provides a lot of value to our organization. Or we can look at it from a business perspective on here too, from the different impacts, or if we flip this around, from the value that it brings to the organization. And it's Chris, go ahead, Chris.
No. One of the other things is that what that first slide did with all those points, I just realized it is, I didn't actually just, I noted and it proves it is, it validates what I call my gut. I know what I have to bring up first as well as the exposure.
Yeah, we can see on here, I mean, we say server name. It's typically not infrastructure-based with servers on here. But when you're looking at this, imagine that's applications on there. Here's what we're delivering. Here's what the business needs. Here's problems. Here's where we're doing well. This is a report card for the CIO on how well they're delivering technology to the business, how well they can recover that, and how important it is to the business. We matter. Okay. So as we go on to the next group on here, the business level and how it's delivered and how we can deliver on that. So the C-level business has, let's just say their motivation, nothing strange here, cut costs. And guess what? And do more with less. make us more money on here. You are the trusted advisor on how you can do that. What are the high-value activities, things that can, i.e., generate more revenue? What are the low-value activities, the things that we can cut on there? We can look at our different business processes. Now, this is assuming, and some people do this, some people don't, that we have done a mapping, a business process mapping, whether it be a swim lane diagram. We do something called an operation blueprint, which I'll show you. Do we understand how the business normally operates and is supported? We need to understand that to understand how to improve it. Oh, and by the way, to understand how to recover it too. When I look in here, I have a chart. It's very similar to the IT chart on here on total importance. What the heck does total importance mean? So now the business, so now say a CFO or a COO looks at this and says, what is this? What do these points mean on here? Tell me about that. What I've done on here is I've looked across the organization. I've done a weighted average of everything that matters to you, that brings value to you. Revenue, productivity, any type of, getting out of any type of legal or regulatory, complying with those different items on there. Liquidity. It all depends on what's important to them. And I've gauged importance by that. If you want, I'll show you. Why don't we have another meeting? I'll show you how I got to that. If you want to see all the numbers, I know you like numbers and do that. Okay, they may want to see that. If I want to go on in, I can show them this chart again, right? Looks very familiar on here. Obviously, information is provided on how they align with the real values on there. They can really see this. They want to ask you how you gather that. Once again, basic, and then you can go into another meeting to give them the details on there. So when we look on here and we start going into specific business activities, we're looking for inefficiencies and vulnerabilities in those highest value activities. So from that chart, I'm going to have a blueprint, which is very simple to see, for each one of my business processes. I call them business functions, activities. What do you do? I give them a process mapping. I look for manual steps. I look for repeated activities. I look for automation. I look for things that aren't operating overall, not operating very well. And I come up with a solution. I don't just tell them the problem. I say, you know what? It's taking you a while to process your claims. Why? Because you do it manually. Well, how could we automate that process? You could use more auto adjudication. We went out, we used swipe cards for things. I'm automating with technology. Oh, and by the way, the CIO knows all about that. Would you like me to set up a meeting with the three of us and we can talk about that? That actually has happened. This is a little hard to see. I've tried to make this big on my screen here. You can see on here, bit busy. What I do is I'll go in and I'll highlight some of the different items on here. So I'll go in and I'll highlight the inefficient places on here. So when I'm going in, I have on here the basic business process. Doesn't matter what it says. Here's the steps. Here's the technology and the people and the vendors that support the steps. Here's the dependencies on other business departments. And then here's a summary of everything here on the right. Am I doing stuff manually on here? Okay. Are there any problems? Are there any manual handoffs? Are there things that we're doing well? I'm giving a report card on that particular process. And that's really, really important for us. We want to show them how they're doing. It might not be all bad. Focus is important for those. So, and I've been always asked that. Give me the top 3 things, Frank. I don't have time to look at 15 right now. Give me your top 3 things. This was the functional problem. This was the functional problem. The second is, can you meet your phone for a second? Okay, thanks. All right, sounds like Chris is about to get on his flight. Anyway, so making your seat at the table in front of shorter methods to get the meeting can be reperformed to provide value on an ongoing basis. If you're a one-trick pony, you're not going to keep on going to the show. You have to have that established. It takes time to do that. You're reliable. So when somebody asks you a question, when you're sitting there and you go, you know what, I'm kind of wondering, has that business, what's that business area look like now, Mark? Are they doing a little bit better now? I know you just implemented a new technology. I don't know. I heard something about this whole thing with this security bug, virus, breach. I don't know. What's going on there? How are we handling that right now? They're trusting you to provide that information on status. And also, too, there's a lot of translation involved. Like we said, not RTO, not RPO, not data breach, not, we were talking about, it was IAM or anything like that. I don't know what that means. Translate for me, make it simple, let me understand, and let me make new decisions confidently. You enable me to do that, and what's more valuable than that? So those are the points on there. So you can see here, and once again, back to the listeners kind of thing. Ask questions, and then listen. So now that we've spent, speaking of listening, now that we've spent about an hour asking you, telling you becoming a trusted advisor, what it takes to be a trusted advisor, I'm going to minimize my panel on here and then open up my question panel on here so we can see some of the questions on here.
Right. If anyone does have any questions for Frank or the panel, again, you could find that question panel on the right-hand side of your screen. We do not have any questions as of this point, Frank, so.
Okay. All right. All right, well, great. Okay. Well, if there's no questions, what we'll do, I'm going to put up one more slide on here just in case anybody thinks of anything, and also to give you a couple of more options on here, too. If you'd like to email any of us, I believe Bob is probably going to make our presentation available, but my email address is frank@strategicbcp.com. There's Mark's email address, meggleston@hpplans.com, and Chris Duffy is cduffy@strategicbcp.com. We have information about our organization and also some of these stories and tips up on our website. We also have a blog, too, where we discuss a lot of these specific challenges on there. So you'll find a lot of information up there and also our contact information if you forget it. And there's also a number of different webinars, playbooks, documents, white papers on a variety of different topics from BC Professional Development. We have our Value Killers series, which has been downloaded over 10,000 times right now about things that, activities and deliverables that you can do better like this. Gives you some more examples of what you've seen up here and the topics about metrics, compliance, you name it. We probably have some sort of educational material on that. So feel free to go up to the website and grab that too. And that's, if you don't remember, this full URL on here, strategicbcp.com. We'll take you right there, and you can go and you can grab whatever you like. So thanks.
All right. Wonderful. Any parting words here today, Frank?
No, I just want to thank everybody for their time today, and we really appreciate it. Hopefully this was valuable to everyone. And like I said, if you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out to us. Oh, actually, you know what? Actually, we do have hold on. We do have a question on here. Okay. Let's see. How would you overcome any gender bias? Okay, so that's interesting. You know what? I don't know if
well, Frank,
Mark or
given that I'm a social worker or a psychotherapist in the room, I don't mind starting with that one.
Yeah.
So Pam, I think that's a really good question, and it's getting a whole lot of information or a whole lot of play in the journals these days because IT is a notoriously non-diverse field. So there's actually initiatives. There are clubs, there are bodies. LinkedIn's another good place to find some. Women in technology, perhaps, maybe women in business continuity. I imagine there's going to be some good sources to help people out with that. I think the other thing is being, again, direct and knowing thyself. That's a big part about gaining consensus and moving up the corporate ladder. So if you know that going into that, be cognizant of that and try and work with the person to see if that indeed is a barrier. And if you encounter it, I think that the prudent advice these days is to directly bring it up, call it on the spot.
Yeah, it's interesting, on that, on any type of bias and actually getting that meeting. It was interesting when I was at Treasury and I was, proposing my solutions. I was 24 years old. I was by far and away the youngest person, not only in my area, but I believe one of the youngest people at the Treasury Department. So getting a seat at the table was somewhat problematic on there. You know what? Saying something, having a script, rehearsing it, being confident to overcome that, I think was really important. And actually, there were a couple of times there too where I initially where they didn't want to hear what I had to say, or if if it was a little too much, then they said, could you please leave? I think we also, I learned a lot by some of the mistakes that I made. Delivering to them is understanding their motivations and being able to sync up with them. If it doesn't matter to them, no matter who you are, if you both like playing golf, or you have children or something like that, people connect on a lot of different levels. But it's really about what's important to you. I really think I can help you. I know you think, and I've even said this to people before, I know you think that I'm the doomsday prognosticator. I know you think that all I do is put together a plan. Can you give me 20 minutes to prove you wrong? I don't think you'll be disappointed. And I've even brought in food sometimes too. That's the great connector too when you get that. Okay, let's see if we have.
Nope.
I think that's it.
If we do have any other follow-up questions, we'll forward them on to Frank and the panel here, and they can follow up after the webinar. We are past the hour here. Let folks get to their next, hourly meetings, things like that planned. So, again, thanks everyone for their attendance here today. We again hope you gather some great information from today's webinar. DRJ would also like to thank Frank, Mark, and Chris for their time here today, as well as Strategic BCPs for sponsoring today's webinar. We will be emailing everyone a link to the recording of this webinar. You can view it as frequently as you wish or share it with your peers. If you do have any additional questions, please contact Disaster Recovery Journal. Thanks again. This now ends today's webinar. Thanks, guys.